All right, and remember, everyone, don't fuck up. Not even once. No pressure.
Oh, good advice. I was thinking maybe I would.
No, dude, trust me on this one. We've tried it so many times. but don't fuck up. All right. Hey, guys, and otherwise, this is Jonathan O. Roselion.
And I'm Noah, also known as Polyphonic, and you're listening to Horns and Wings, the podcast where we read Saga one issue at a time. And sometimes we read this issue with friends, like this time. Today, I am super stoked to announce that we've got Patrick Willems on the show. Hi, Patrick.
Hey, guys. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Yay.
So for those of our I just about said readers, I guess listeners, who are unaware, can you
Actually, no, I got so tired of editing these, I just started putting out a transcript, so that is accurate.
Okay. Yeah, because everyone knows that transcribing is not a lot of work and not mind-numbingly boring.
No, it's so much easier than cutting 3 coughs out.
Yes. So Patrick, can you tell our audience a bit about who you are and what you do?
Oh, that's a big question. But I think maybe the simplest answer is, I also am a YouTuber, I guess. And on YouTube, I talk about movies. That sums it all up, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think personally, Patrick is one of my favorite channels on YouTube. You should totally go check him out for just like really kind of fresh, fun takes on movies. But you're also a big comics fan.
I am, yeah. Honestly, before I wanted to be a filmmaker, I wanted to be a comic book artist. So it's kind of my first love. I gave up that dream when I was like 13 years old. But but yeah, I really love comics, and one of the comics I really love is Saga.
Yeah, so can you tell us a bit about your kind of history with Saga? How'd you come to it? Why do you like it? All of that good stuff.
Totally. So for years, I think starting at some point in high school, I just became a fan of Brian K. Vaughan. I read Runaways and Why the Last Man and Ex Machina and all those things, and then of course there was his sort of like he disappeared from comics for a while and he was off doing Hollywood stuff, and when as soon as Saga was announced, like, Brian K. Vaughan's coming back. He's doing this big ongoing series at Image with this like kind of newer artist, Fiona Staples, who looks really cool. I was in immediately, and then the timing was great because I moved to New York City 2 months before the first issue came out, and so when the first issue was out and like BKV was like in New York doing press for it, he did like a launch party at my local comic store, which is sadly no longer around. It was Bergen Street Comics, which was in Brooklyn, which was the best comic store in the city. And yeah, so I got to like buy the first issue, like hang out with him. So I was there like from the very beginning, and I've been reading it.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And I've been reading it in single issues since the first issue. And I haven't missed one yet.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, I guess we should talk about this issue, shouldn't we?
Yeah. Hey, Noah.
Yeah.
First of all, what's going on this cover?
This cover is amazing because this is a perspective shot, a POV shot from your perspective as you are being tenderly fucked by Prince Robot 4. So he is topless on top of you with a sheet. On his face is like a distorted screen with two people kissing that might be Marco and Alana, but I'm not entirely sure.
It looks exactly like them.
Yeah, I'm going to say there's no way it is not.
Okay. And there's in case that wasn't sexual enough, there's a big kind of white splatter behind his head.
I really feel like with some of these covers, I mean, obviously with the inside content, but sometimes with the covers, they're just trying to like push this as far as like they'll get as they can get away with.
Yeah,
because this is like a mid-sex POV shot.
Yeah, and like everything Fiona Staples does, it's still just absolutely stunning. Just so beautifully lit. The color palette, the like the just like kind of pale yellow behind him and the kind of blue green of his skin work so well together.
Yeah, I will say the image on the screen does kind of resemble the cover to issue 15.
Oh yeah, the like romance novel one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Although I am a little confused. They seem to have swapped skin tones for this image on the screen here.
You're right.
That's what was confusing me.
You guys need to get Fiona Staples on the podcast and ask her about it.
Yeah.
You know what? Now that you say it,
we'd love to ask her about a lot of things. We hadn't considered having her on, but
now that we have close personal friend of Brian K. Vaughan that was there at the beginning,
his day ones.
I think we have the connections necessary.
Oh yeah, Brian and I are like best buds. We talk all the time, and by that I mean we talked 7 years ago. He was very nice.
Patrick was actually the reference model for this cover.
It's true. It is totally true. No one can prove otherwise.
So I this cover already has me thinking about a question that I'm surprised we haven't brought up yet, actually, which is why do the robots have nipples?
Oh boy, here's another.
So they can be milked.
Exactly. Wait, I do. Now that I think we brought up before. How do they eat? Do they eat? What goes on here? But I think
the many questions.
Those are just sockets, man. That's their recharge port.
I mean, I feel like you could ask a lot of questions about just like the robot's anatomy. Why do they have many of these anatomical features? Why do they presumably have like a rectum when they don't need to? Like they shouldn't need to like digest food.
Yeah, we got a splash
seen them
page
shitting.
of Prince Robot shitting.
Right.
All right, that's true. I revoke my nipple question.
Yeah, thank you for wasting everyone's time now.
But isn't that like a lot of Saga where it's like there's these various real world elements that like why do they have dishwashers in this world and stuff like that? And it's like I feel like like Prince Robot's nipples and everything. It's like you just have to go with it. That's this world.
Yeah. It's very much just the like you're just in this or you're not because so little of it is going to be explained and it's so much better that way.
Right. Hey.
Yeah.
You want me to take the first one?
Do you want to take the first one?
I really want to take the first one. No,
okay. You can take the first one.
All right. Well, we start out with a milder splash page than usual. With Upshur and Doff lying in bed together, but we get a bit of a bombshell where Upshur says, I think, or speaks, however they talk, I think they went to see the author, and figures out what Prince Robot figured out before. And we see them discussing it a bit, and then Doff says, quiet. He thinks that there's someone in the room, and we get the amazing reveal of Upshur sitting up in bed saying, in here with us. And we see, what kind of dog is this, by the way? What?
The Saint Bernard, is that what they're called?
Saint Bernard, yeah, that sounds correct.
Or whatever they're called in this world.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a Saint Bernard, but it's black and red and has these white glowing eyes. And where they usually have the little barrel thing around the neck, it has a barrel with a skull and crossbones on it. And it's standing in the darkness right behind Upshur, and it snuffs out to, which is amazing sound effect. Two little darts that hit Upshur and Doff. Doff says that thing poisoned us, and then we hear a voice off panel saying that stuff won't kill you, just your story. And we get a reveal of a very cool lady, or possibly non-binary person, or man, who knows? And they look straight out of a Humphrey Bogart film. Yeah. And is wearing a trench coat, skinny black tie with a white button-up shirt, and has a familiar crash helm on their lap. And they introduce themselves as the Brand, and which we saw a reference to, an issue or two ago?
Oh, we've got another freelancer.
With some sort of connection to the will. and introduces the dog as Sweet Boy, which I'm immediately in love with, and says that the poison that they're injected with is embargon, and it will kill both of them if either of them say a word about Alana and company to anyone outside of that room. They will immediately die. They covered the union's strike. Yeah, they covered the union strike pretty fairly, so she's not going to kill them. But they're not allowed to say anything or they will die. And then she takes out a switchblade and slashes through the air like we saw Marco do with his axe in an earlier issue, and makes a rift, a portal, and says it's the stories with no sides that worry them, in reference to why this one is such a deadly story. And that is our intro to the brand and Sweet Boy.
We have officially met the brand.
Fucking finally.
And I'm fired up. The brand is one of my favorite characters.
I'm very jazzed. Which actually, Patrick, do you have so far? Do you have a favorite character in the series?
At this point, look, I mean, this is not an original take, but there is no fictional character, I think, in any like current ongoing work, no matter the medium, who I am as invested in as Ghüs.
Yes.
Who has only appeared once, I believe, in the series so far.
Yeah, has only had a speaking role.
We've seen him in the background a few times.
They love using him as a transitional shot, but not enough Ghüs.
I think it was only because it's issue, is it 12, where we get the scene that we return to in this issue.
Yeah,
it does like a flash forward. And so that's the issue that introduces Ghüs. And I'm not going to say anything about issues beyond this one, but Ghüs is not in this issue. But in Saga, I think, I mean, like, I just care about Ghüs so much. He's such a good guy. Him and Friendo. It's like, I think Saga has so many brilliant choices made throughout, especially visual choices, and the idea of just giving a seal little legs and putting him in yellow overalls is like, I mean, honestly, give Fiona Staples a Nobel Prize for that.
Well, and here's what I'll say about that is that's an ingenious idea. But then having him have a friend/partner that's a giant walrus is so perfect. It's one of those things where it's like it doesn't need an explanation because just the visual language of it is so cohesive.
Yeah. You see it and you get it. And the walrus's name is Friendo. And you're like, oh, yes, of course. Honestly, the greatest gift I've ever given a person, and probably ever will, was when I was at San Diego Comic-Con, I think 2 years ago. I just discovered that they had, I think that was like the first time they released the plush Ghüs.
It's so good.
Yeah, and my sister is a huge Saga fan, and Ghüs is her favorite character. And for years she'd been saying like, "Oh man, I wish they would make a plush Ghüs." And so I just bought it, and then I returned to the city and I just gave it to her. She didn't even know it existed, and she cried. She was so happy.
Amazing.
And that's the joy that Ghüs brings to the world. And sadly, he's not in this issue, but I will say, I love the brand, and I really love Sweet Boy. And John, thank you for reminding me what Upshur and Doff's names were, because I always forget.
Yeah.
And no disrespect to them.
No, we had trouble. Like, when we first got to their scene, we realized we did not know which one was which.
Yep.
Because it's always just Upshur and Doff, if that.
They're a package deal.
Yeah. So this has been a learning process for everyone.
I think it's interesting, though, because something that actually John and I have noticed throughout this issue, and I don't know if you noticed it upon rereading, but both of us kind of missed this in our first read, but every issue in this arc opens with kind of Upshur and Doff investigating as a framing device and them getting closer and closer to figuring out where Marco and Alana are. And here we open with them hitting it and them figuring out like how to find Marco and Alana.
Yeah, I was just this is the just some, I guess, background. I was saying this to you guys before we were recording. I haven't read any of these issues since like single issues when they were released, and so I reread a bunch of this, like this whole arc, to refresh myself for this episode. And yeah, I was just noticing that like that every issue opens with them, and I do like the characters. I just forget their names.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's such an interesting. There's so much more structure to this than I realized the multiple times I read through it. Especially with even back in volume 2, every issue starts out with a flashback, which I never noticed before, and then they kind of take this a very similar structure but make it about Upshur and Doff, and I just really I love how you see the confidence go higher and higher with this book as it goes on. But I love the fact that other than the Special Agent Gale in the previous issue, we have gotten virtually no like known characters from the story in any of these cold opens with Upshur and Doff, and yet I am so sincerely invested, and it has been so interesting to the point that it's like that makes like. I'll get into this a bit later with a different scene, but it really makes me appreciate how like Saga can really just mix things up as much as it wants, and in terms of like the cast of characters and everything, and I will still be so invested in this book. And it is so cool that we've just gotten all these, like, it's just a totally unrelated other side of the galaxy story going on here that has been absolutely fantastic.
I think another thing that's really interesting about this is through each of these Upshur and Doff scenes, we get more and more hints that they're a couple until it's explicitly said here. In the previous one, Special Agent Gale kind of talks about how their home planet has a taboo of homosexuality, and that's kind of implied to be a threat towards them. And in the episode before that, you see them calling each other honey or something. But this is the first time that we see kind of like explicit confirmation that there's a couple, and that's just this little kind of trend of revelation that's been growing throughout their arc.
Right. Okay, and one thing that I really want to point out about this scene, in terms of execution, we've talked before about how when you do a page turn in a comic, realistically you have to think about what's 2 pages away, because they're going to look at the opposite page first. And so you can't have like a reveal like anywhere, but that if you want it to be effective in the pacing, you have to be conscious of like they're going to see the next 2 pages and not just the next page. And I love that in the second and third page of this issue, when you get that page turn, your eye, because of the colors, is immediately drawn to the brand. And so we get that sort of reveal of the brand, but it is specifically very hard to spot until you're reading it. Sweet Boy's reveal.
Yeah.
So it becomes so effective in almost this like just great horror moment, which we talked about before, of how amazing Fiona Staples is at horror and does not do it enough. But that because of that, it's literally the darkest thing in these pages. You get as effective as possible a reveal for Sweet Boy, like standing in the darkness, and it is, which every time I've read this issue, I do not spot it until I get to that panel, like right when they want me to spot it.
Yeah,
it's so good, and I do just have to again draw attention to something I'd totally forgotten about until rereading it. Sweet Boy's ability to shoot these poison darts out of his nose with the amazing sound effect snuffed.
Yeah. And also the thing that I love, the implication that the darts, or at least the poison for them, is held in the little barrel with the skull and crossbones around his neck, where they usually like put the like liquor for mountain dogs.
Mm-hmm.
It's so cool.
It's so cool. I also think, talking about page turns, the next page turn too, the page turn from the brand sitting where 2 pages forward, you see the brand like in a full splash page action shot. I think that's a little That's a very effective page turn, and I think it's interesting because most often when we've seen new characters introduced in Saga, it's through a splash page. But the brand we're introduced to in a regular panel, not a splash page. But then at the end of the scene, she gets her big splash.
Yeah, we get the splash when she is looking at peak badassness. And also look at that little the golden hilt, because we know that the freelancers have lances, but this is the first time. This looks like sort of like a rapier hilt that she has on her belt.
So what is the brand doing exactly with the switchblade on that splash page?
So
like opening a portal?
So this is something that we saw like they love to bring back little details that you had no idea were going to be referenced again, because there are so many like amazing throwaway things in this book that I'm always just ecstatic to see something come back. But this was something that we saw when Marco's parents first got onto their rocket ship.
Right,
with those golden helmets. Apparently, but this is we're finding out it works with any, I don't know, weapon or sharp objects. But if you're wearing that helmet and then you do the slashing motion, and apparently you don't have to like speak blue or anything for it to work. But it'll make a portal to wherever.
One thing that I like about this page, especially, I'm not sure there's anyone working right now in comics who understands page turns better than Brian K. Vaughan. And not to discredit Fiona Staples at all. She's an essential part of this. But just thinking of like Vaughn's history with cliffhangers and stuff like that. And just like, and the fact that all his comics are so readable and so hard to put down. But this page, especially like at being positioned where it is, it feels very cinematic in terms of like cutting, like doing a scene transition, but cutting on action.
Yeah,
it's like she has this big like a downward swipe, and that's like immediately like the action of the brand's arm is not dissimilar from just the action of turning the page.
Yeah, it's the artist turning the page for you.
Pretty
much.
It's very clever.
Yep. Yeah, and that's something we've picked out in our rereading is how many things feel cinematic, how it really like borrows the language of film very effectively. And I think that's actually a good transition to, because once again, to start off the next scene, which I will take, I suppose, we get the like wide shot, medium shot, close up, which is just like bread and butter in film, right? And we get some HTN, Hazel transitional narration here.
Yeah.
Everyone knows that.
And speaking of cinematic stuff, these are the kind of like classic widescreen panels.
Yeah.
Like Brian Hitch storytelling.
Yeah, exactly.
So we cut back to where Hazel is narrating, saying that it looked like they'd started to overstay their welcome in the lighthouse, which, of course, we are now finally caught up to where we began this arc with the showdown in the lighthouse between Heist and Prince Robot. And now we're seeing a bit of a Rochambeau, if you will. We're seeing this from the perspective of Marco and Alana and Clara. And we've got Isabel updating them as to what's happening downstairs, which we know is this amazing showdown between Heist and Prince Robot. And they're kind of trying to figure out what to do. Clara naturally wants to go down and fight Prince Robot, but Alana says, we have a family to think about now, so she is saying we need to run and hide. And then meanwhile, we go back downstairs to where they were, and we see Oswald Heist having just had his knee blown out, and just more of this incredible dialogue between Prince Robot and Oswald Heist. And Prince Robot walks over to the desk and picks up a unfinished manuscript and reads this, the opposite of war. And he says, "Oh, this is another one of your pacifistic books." And Heist says, "Why the hell does everyone think peace is the opposite of war? It's just a lull in the action." and then he says, give yourself give it a read, and we get just such a great back and forth between Heist and Robot to end this scene. Knock yourself out, circle any typos you find, would you? And then we cut to Robot with his blaster cannon, like at Oswald's face with lightning on his screen, saying, "I'll settle for a summary, thanks." I love the dialogue between Heist and Robot. We got it earlier, and I love that we're seeing more of it. It's just such kind of quick, sharp dialogue.
I would watch a David Mamet just one room, two character play with with Heist and Robot for a good 2 hours and be totally satisfied with that.
I'm always impressed by just the great visual choice of giving Robot a screen for a head that just projects different things at different times. I mean, we've already talked about the cover, but just, right there, again, doing kind of a cinematic thing. It's like, someone saying a dramatic line while pointing a gun. And then, we've seen plenty of movies where then lightning would crash outside the window. But instead of here, it's just crashing on his face screen,
making his own dramatic timing on this. Who did I compare? I actually compared Prince Robot to Jake the dog, I think, in the first issue, where it's just it's this ability that he has, Jake the dog from Adventure Time, or it's this ability that he has that is not I feel like a lot of people would do, give characters abilities that are good specifically for a plot point they want to get to or something. But so many of these characters, along with Lion Cat and stuff, are just constructed to get as much great plot moments out of them as humanly possible. And it's just this sort of infinite possibility thing with his screen and his shape-shifting arms that we've now established can turn into different things. And it's just he's created this nice little toolbox of I have so many cool characters that can do cool things at any given moment, that he just has this total freedom of ending a scene however he wants, and it's paid off so many times.
And I think another thing kind of that actually is Isabel's ability to make illusions is something like that. But here in this scene, we kind of get an explanation that the illusions don't work on robots, which I think is a good job kind of just preemptively covering up a potential plot hole.
Dude, that double exposition line of how fucking efficient I wish, but my projections are as worthless as your heartbreaker against machines. So it's just with one sentence, I'm going to get rid of all the possibilities we have here.
I also love just Clara in the background of that panel, just freaking out, so pissed off.
Yeah, she's so exasperated.
It's like that Perfectly Cut Screams Twitter account where it's that exact moment.
Also, just the way Clara talks is amazing. Then what possible use is this intangible freeloader to us? The other one more quick thing on this scene that I noticed in the last scene too is as the tension is climbing, we're noticing Fiona Staples use more shading, especially the close up on Hazel. There's really dramatic lighting there, which really builds the tension.
That feels like a silent film shot. It actually feels like something that would be out of The Lighthouse. That sort of vignette to it. Yeah.
Also, that's just a great shot. I mean, baby Hazel is always fun, and just her face all scrunched up and her eyes really wide with Marco's hand clamped over her mouth. It's just a funny pan. I mean, in a dramatic moment, it is just a very funny little picture of this baby.
Yeah, and then also it's kind of just telling you what the tone of the room is immediately too, in a very effective way of everyone shut the fuck up.
Right.
There's crazy shit happening.
I think this is something that's great about Brian K. Vaughan is he's very willing to use kind of archetypal images and scenes and settings within this very strange story. Like the last scene is set very film noir, and it makes you like you're right in and you understand, and kind of the trope of like holding the baby or small child's mouth because you need to be silent. It's done all of the time, but it tells you so much and sets the scenes and stakes so well. And I think Brian K. Vaughan really as a lot of his other work and his pop cultural references kind of show, has an understanding of our story vocabulary, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Anything else we want to point out in this scene? Are we good to go on?
Yeah. Should I take the next one?
If you want to, no pressure if you don't want to, but
If you feel comfortable, no pressure. Don't fuck it up. Don't
Guys,
fuck it up,
I got this.
All
Okay. So we begin on Gwendolyn here. Again, using kind of like a cinematic move of, reflecting the lighthouse in her binoculars. And as we like pull back, as the like quote unquote camera pulls back. And I've got to say, so like basically every character, Gwendolyn has a great design.
Yep.
But putting the Will's like sort of cape and cowl on her
Fuck yes.
looks it just rules. She looks so cool.
yeah.
Yep.
And especially like on a cliff with her staff and Lion Cat. This might be the like peak Gwendolyn look for the whole series. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
This is like Cap with Thor's hammer. shit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
That's exactly.
she took the coolest visual elements of another character and added them to her already cool look. It's great. And but yeah, so they're just like they're looking at the lighthouse, trying to figure out, if Prince Robot is there, what he's doing, what their like plan of attack is, because really they just want to go and like get Marco so that he can heal the Will. And watching her like interact with Lion Cat and try to figure out like some like course of action is fun because she's not as used to dealing with Lion Cat as the Will is.
Right.
And so I like her saying like we now have more than enough probable cause or whatever to storm that place, and Lion Cat just cuts her off with lying.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, here's a question for you guys. Have you thought about what Lion Cat's voice sounds like?
Oh,
boy,
we've talked
have we.
about this.
I don't like any of them. Actually, here's the thing we discovered, which was in one of the letters pages, Brian K. Vaughan, it gives a sort of, I think, half serious answer in reference to Lion Cat's voice, which is that it sounds like his wife's voice, where it's like clear, confident, and vaguely Canadian, I think he said.
Okay.
But yeah, no, Noah, I think Noah's headcanon is that Lion Cat just sounds like Dustin Hoffman in Midnight Cowboy.
I'm lying here.
and I asked Noah to do a hissing, terrifying Lion Cat, and I haven't recovered from that. Because it's the scariest thing I've ever heard in my entire life.
Do you know what episode that is so I can seek it out?
I think that's episode 6.5. We were doing a Between the Arcs episode, and it is really upsetting.
Great.
I cannot forewarn you enough.
Yeah. I want to hear Patrick's Lion Cat voice.
I mean, I don't have an impression of it, but for me, I sort of imagine it like almost like more cat-like, but in the sense of like a cat coughing up a hairball, a sort of like deeper, like raspy one.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Kind of like the way in Lord of the Rings movies, the way Gollum kind of coughs up his name.
Yeah.
Right.
A little bit like that, but less choky, if that makes sense. Almost like this kind of guttural sound.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I always heard it. But again, this is not a medium with audio components, so
right.
We'll never know.
That's
unless they adapt it for film or TV,
which they shouldn't.
I mean, I know, like, Vaughn and Staples have talked about how, like, they designed it to be, like, unadaptable. Mm-hmm. And I don't know what you'd gain from doing that. I feel like, I mean, it's a perfect comic. No need to do that. Yeah, anyway, I just, sorry about the tangent. I just,
no. This is what we do. but I will say on that front, which is something we discussed in the live Q&A we did on the YouTube channel, but not on the actual, like, podcast stream, which was my pitch for a live action thing, which is get Damon Lindelof to do exactly what he's doing with Watchmen, but with Saga, where it's the story has taken place. Those events have not changed at all, but we're just building on that world with mostly different characters.
Hey, considering that I watched the first episode of Watchmen like 3 hours ago, I'm in. I like the idea.
Yeah, there we go.
And like follow a unique new freelancer or something like that as your kind of like story.
Yeah, give me the Mandalorian of Saga, and I'll watch the shit out of that.
Right.
But yeah, no, I like that. I really like that lion cat interpretation. It also sort of reminds me of like, there are those like huskies and stuff that just do weird barking moans that sound like words, and I like the idea of like some variation on that where it sounds as cat-like as possible, but still is perceptible as a word.
Exactly.
Should we continue this scene?
Yeah. Now that I've finished my derailing this podcast, which is, I will say, me saying that for anyone that's listened to any of my podcasts, there's a massive irony there because those are nothing but tangents.
I think most podcasts are nothing but tangents.
I mean, my favorite ones are. That's what I like. It's like, sure, I mean, like, talk about the subject at hand a bit, but I'm there for just the rambling, freewheeling discussions that veer off into unexpected territory. Speaking of veering, actually, no, that's I can't pivot into that. Forget what I was about to say. Anyway, but basically here, Gwendolyn is just like making her case to Lion Cat that, look, we are running out of time. The will is going to die. We gotta go in there, and I love that last panel on the page of just Lion Cat all just clamming up and realizing that like, I guess fine, this is a bad idea, but we have no better option. And then we cut into back into their ship, where the will is regaining consciousness with a massive neck wound, talking to Sophie, who is tied up, who is very sorry that she says, I'm so sorry I cut your neck with a little knife. And so here,
how many times I've had to buy that card, that Hallmark card.
Honestly, they've been pretty selective about the Saga merch they make. They should make that merch.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd fucking love that.
That would be great. But here, I really love this scene as the will is losing blood and like his consciousness is fading, and he's like trying to give Sophie some advice, and she's like, back in her proper state of mind, and she's all perked up and listening closely and like hanging on his every word, and then he gives her financial advice about taxes, and he just goes, money fucks up everything. And then he passes out, and then and the panels are getting smaller and smaller as we just have like these close-ups, and then we pull back to this big half-page overhead shot of him just maybe being dead. Mm-hmm. This is like, I know that the following issue is like the climactic issue of the arc, but but right here, Vaughn is kind of doing the like Christopher Nolan style thing of just like cross-cutting between multiple storylines of like parallel action, with like everything escalating at the same time, and then cutting off from one just as it reaches like some sort of emotional peak.
Yeah, which I will say, this issue in this arc is no different from the previous two, where it feels like the next to last issue is like, this one actually veers from it a little bit because we do have we'll get into it, but it feels like the next to last issue is always like the big climax and a lot of the time the resolution, and it kind of feels like the last issue in each arc is just lopped off from the beginning of the next one, where it feels like the first issue of the next arc, which gives it that like cliffhanger, like I just need to read more feeling. But yeah, this is such a perfect issue in terms of just Saga going fucking full speed ahead and doing what it does best.
I love too that like the emotional stakes of the will now, where you're just like you're so conflicted because you're so much on everybody's side by this point, because like we saw in the earlier issues, like you like the will, but he also just seems like a completely like terrifying guy. But here, when he's lying on his side, the look in his eyes as he's talking to Sophie and trying to help her, like it's just such a raw human moment that really just makes you really, really hope that the Will's not dead.
Yeah.
And plus, at this point, like, you know, he's kind of become a father figure to Sophie and has named her and has really and seems less concerned than ever with catching Marco and Alana.
Yeah.
And so he's really become like so much more sympathetic over the past, I don't know, 6 issues or so.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really want us to talk about the fact that this comic has a quality that I see in so few things, but is always, I feel like, just something that so many things should aim for, which is the fact that with everything we've read up to this point and everything that's happened in this comic, I sincerely do not know if the Will is dead or not. Like if this was Han Solo or something, like I know that, or like Indiana Jones or something, like I know that he's not dead, and this is just trying to scare us, trying to trick us into thinking that's the case. But with Saga and with everything it's done to me personally so far, I sincerely do not know if this is this character's death that we just witnessed.
Yeah.
And I feel like, you know, a few things like Game of Thrones was obviously really good at just making you terrified for every character at all times. And there are just those select things where it's just like you constantly have that feeling of anything could happen because of how willing it is to break those tropes and just surprise you in every way. And ever since, you know, the Stalk died in issue 5 or whatever, I've just been like on edge for every character. And so, like, I just want to sit and appreciate for a second that in terms of stakes, there has been such a brilliant balancing act that, like, yeah, I'm feeling stronger emotions right now because it really could be the last living scene for this character.
Yeah, I mean, this has always been a thing that Vaughn is famous for, like abruptly killing off major characters. Like through everything he's done, from like, you know, Runaways back in the day, and it always reminded me, even like Game of Thrones is definitely like a big comparison point, because it's a show that was famous for that. But with Vaughn, especially like in the early 2000s, it always felt to me like a thing that he may have like sort of like, I don't want to say like borrowed from, because killing characters has been around forever, but it always reminded me of the way that like it would happen on Joss Whedon's TV shows. And where just characters would major characters would abruptly die, like throughout like Buffy and all of those things. And the way that Vaughn has always done it has reminded me a lot of that, especially because like tonally his comics are similar to those shows.
Yeah.
And I think you've got a really big advantage with that, with comics, or I would also say like the written word compared to film, because no matter what with film, especially in the modern age, in the digital age, you like learn about, oh, this person has signed on for another series, or you're like, oh, well, this is like 30 minutes into a 3-hour movie and this person is the lead build actor. They're probably not going to die. There's all of this kind of like the real world stuff going around. But with comics, it's like, no, you can just drop a character and that's it, right?
Yeah. And I mean, like, and all any readers know about what's going to happen is like they might have seen the solicitation and cover for the issue like 3 months from now.
Yeah,
but that's basically no info.
And that's if they were really digging.
Yeah, there's no actor contracts.
Yeah, and also I feel like in terms of, which makes Saga even more special in the context of comics, if there's a character death in one of the big 2 comics, 90% of the time they're going to do an event called the death of fucking Wolverine or whatever. Like, you know, that character is going to die so far in advance, and it gets rid of that shock so thoroughly. And so that's another thing that I really appreciate about Saga and its format is like, actually, I wouldn't even put it past Saga to put a dead character on the cover of an issue 3 issues after they're dead. Like, even then, I'd still have that.
They've done that. They've literally done that.
Oh yeah, no, we had the stalk like in like the second arc or something. So yeah, it's absurd.
It is funny because there's always so much talk about how death in comic books means nothing, but it's really only death in big 2 comics.
Yeah.
Where it does mean nothing. And again, like without getting into spoilers, but do you guys read Southern Bastards?
No.
I've gone through the first 2 trades, I think.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's been, I think, a year since the last issue. It's delayed. But that is up there with Saga, with like my very favorite ongoing series. But that's another series where they just, will just kill major characters like who seem normally like they would be like series regulars if it was a TV show,
right?
And again, it's a thing that especially in comics and like creator-owned comics that you can get away with in a way that you just can't almost anywhere else.
Yeah, totally.
I think another aspect that's really interesting with this is the way that Saga's covers and titles are. Their covers are so abstract that they don't give a hint at anything that might happen in the issue. They're more like thematically cohesive rather than cohesive with the story. And the fact that each issue is just like chapter 15 or whatever, and it's not like they don't have like little subtext or names or things like that, means that when you pick up a Saga comic, you have no idea what is going to happen on the inside. And I think that that's something that's really, really, really unique that very few works of any medium have. Like usually you really do have at least an inkling of an idea what's going on. But to this day, picking up a new Saga issue, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, especially like if you ask someone who had just read up to issue 12, like, hey, what happens next? They probably would not predict that we wouldn't see the resolution, that they pulled a Lost and we wouldn't see the resolution to that until 5 issues later. But yeah, no, it's good. It's good serialized drama. I appreciate it. Also, really quick thing. I know we're really stretching this out, but quick thing I want to point out about specifically this last page where we get the Will passing out or dying or whatever he's doing here. It is, as someone who's made comics before, it is one of the biggest struggles and one of the biggest heartbreaks as a writer is an artist not fully being on board with exactly what kind of beat or emotion that you're trying to do, what you're trying to pull off. And I love how much it feels like Fiona Staples and Brian K. Vaughan are so thoroughly in tune when it comes to getting across a certain emotion or a certain feeling. And I love that those tiny little panels, like you pointed out, leading up to this big half splash of the Will lying there. And honestly, when I talk about my anxiety about whether or not he's dead, so much of that is just this negative space that we're seeing in this angle. And it feels like, the, I won't spoil too much, but a certain shot in Breaking Bad that might be towards the end of the series, and where there's some finality to it that again is just really driving home that what the scene is going for here, that has me terrified.
And it just feels like you can feel the camera slowly pulling out, almost as you're reading this panel.
Yeah. Good scene. Next scene we get a quick little transition with Isabel phasing through the wall again, saying, "No luck. I've been through every inch of this fire trap, but there's 0 exits other than the front door." And we get some discussion from Marco. It picks up some scissors and takes them apart and makes a weapon out of it, and sort of alludes to possibly killing Hazel so that she is not captured. And saying that he's seen what these robots do and what they've done to children, and sort of sparing her from that. And Alana says, even if that thing gets past Heist, it'll never stand a chance against you, me, and then she realizes Clara And we get actually a very similar shot to the Wills, the last shot of the last scene of a big empty room, and Clara has disappeared from it.
Yeah. I don't think I have a ton to say about this, other than just like Marco's character is so well fleshed out that you actually, like, especially having seen Clara, who raised him, you totally understand why he would be willing to mercy kill his daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I will say, so this morning I also reread the first arc to prep for this, and I'd forgotten that in issue 2, Alana does the same thing. She points her gun at Hazel's head, and when facing down the stalk. And so now each parent has like been prepared to mercy kill Hazel.
No one has been more of a threat to this child.
I think that's really a really interesting point, though, to see, because I had completely forgotten about that. And Alana's reaction to the concept of mercy killing, it shows how she has grown and changed as a character in raising Hazel, and in now that they kind of have the idea of a future, they were starting to lay plans and things like that. Now she suddenly isn't willing to do that anymore and is taken aback by the suggestion of it.
Evolution, character arcs, good storytelling.
Yeah.
It's got it all.
All right. Meanwhile, downstairs, oh God, you just know I love these scenes. We're just really milking this heist and robot scene. So we're returning. They're talking about kind of the book that Heist has written, the opposite of war. And Heist asks if Robot has had a near-death experience. And Robot said, yeah, I've had a couple. And then Heist says, well, what did you see? And we get a shot of Robot with his TV screen is blank. And he says, like, did my life flash before my eyes or any of that ridiculous? And then his TV turns off and he goes, that. And we find out that what he saw was his entire platoon having a good old-fashioned Christian orgy together.
Yeah.
And that kind of... And Heist kind of asks, who was it? And Robot says, the whole platoon. Heist says, anything like that ever happened for real? And Robot's like, well, no, I loved and respected my platoon, but that isn't what happened. And Heist brings him to the conclusion that that's because the opposite of war is fucking. And Robot realizes that in that moment he felt like everything was as it should be. When he was about to die and his platoon was having an orgy. And just then we get Hands Where I Can See 'Em, and Clara comes in looking all badass with the battle axe. And Clara calls Robot a drone, and the robot says, I'm sorry, what did you call me? And turns around and fires his blast at her, to which Heist fires his gun at the robot.
Fuck.
He's sent flying across the room. And then we cut to Gwendolyn running in, and I think that's where we'll end this scene for the time being.
Oof. Okay, well, first of all, something that needs to be established. Patrick, on this podcast, there's so many types of sex scenes in this comic, and we don't want to lump them all together. I feel like there's so many types of sex that we try to come up with.
There's a lot in this comic.
Yeah, we try to come up with a very specific label for each one. I don't know about you guys, but I'm thinking just a certified fuck pile is an accurate description.
I think fuck pile is very accurate.
That sums it up.
Patrick Willems presents a certified fuck pile.
I think it's important to describe how we see this certified fuck pile for those who aren't reading, though. We see Prince
for those
Robot...
crazy people who decided not to read this comic, but to listen to people describe it.
Yeah.
You monsters, thank you for your patronage.
We've got Prince Robot standing on a background of what appears to be a TV screen, presumably his face, with some kind of degraded VHS distortion. Hey, I wonder if someone's got a video coming out about that.
Oh my God. Put your fucking dick away now.
And behind him is just everyone fucking people with wings, people with anal beads, people with tails, just a whole fuck pile behind him.
The three species: wings, anal beads, tails.
Yep. and there are some lines of static, like TV static,
conveniently placed.
Which is funny because this is a pretty explicit comic, and this image is still pretty explicit. But there's just like a couple areas where it's like, oh, the static lines are like right at the point of penetration.
Yeah.
That's particularly notable.
We can only piss off Apple so much.
Yeah. And hey, because Fiona Staples draws digitally, no one can ever own or see that original artwork.
I mean, let's see. Let's. I don't care about adapting the book, but let's see how much money I can throw at her to give me the.
Just like, look, I mean,
unfiltered.
they sell prints of so many of her covers.
Yeah.
Just sell a print of this page. Come on.
Exactly.
Fiona, you coward.
Put that up in my bathroom.
Put her up for sale.
Toss that thing up on my ceiling.
My question on this, because of the way the background is it's almost implied that this, for a moment, shows up on Prince Robot's face, but that also might just be his memories with the distortion. What do you guys think on that?
I read it as just his memory, considering
Okay.
that his face screen is totally blank.
That's true, yeah.
While this is happening.
You know what? Now that you brought this up, this is officially my headcanon. His memories have a rewind and fast forward, and so this is like the rewind, like glitching on him recalling something.
That's
That is
amazing.
officially my headcanon. Also, again, something we referenced a little bit earlier, but how much throwaway stuff is in this. I love that the in your face in multiple ways opening splash of him dying on the battlefield and the image of dick sucking on his screen was not just like a one of the shock openers, but was actually significant setup for this exact moment. And again, something that's so cool about this whole series is that there are so many ideas just being thrown into every single page and every single panel that the things that are clearly significant and great, like you cannot see the setup coming even remotely because it's buried under this pile of brilliance where it's just everything could be set up. Like we talked about those I think in volume 2, they're on the egg planet, and there are those witches with the upside down heads, and it's like, this is the coolest shit in the world, and we'll see them for like 8 panels and probably never see them again. But also, if they came back and were significant, it's like, oh, of course, because they're so cool. And so I love that. Like, there's that talk that J.J. Abrams talked about not seeing the setup with like Die Hard and him taking his shoes off and making fists with his feet on carpet was secretly set up, but to get his shoes off for the thing, but you don't know it. And that is, I'm obsessed with that kind of thing. Edgar Wright is amazing at it. But I love the approach that I don't think I've seen before, where it's just like make everything hyper original and creative and brilliant to totally hide what could possibly be set up.
Yeah.
And it is so satisfying when it actually comes back.
Yeah.
I think another thing about this scene that I love too is, well, there's so many things. I mean, just kind of little points. The reaction of and then Prince Robot's screen turning off. Like
The timing of that is so good.
Like you can almost hear the little power down of the TV screen when he says that. And it gets the sense I think something that's really been conveyed so well is that the robots to some extent have control over their screens, but in moments of intense emotion, they don't, and it just like kind of displays their emotions, which I think is, when I describe it like that, it's like, hey, that's like humans and their faces, right? But then I also just love it is so authorly, and I've done some teaching in the past, and what Heist is doing here is called redirection, where instead of telling somebody an answer, you bring somebody to the answer themselves. And I think it's such a brilliant example of that.
Socratic method, baby.
Yeah, exactly. The Socratic method.
Yeah.
And I think it's so convincing that this can kind of stop Prince Robot from blowing his head off right there, because we've learned that Prince Robot is this very kind of flawed, emotional person that's had a lot of struggles in the past. And then also the opposite of war is fucking with a pink flower blooming.
That just
it's beautiful.
Is very vaginal.
Yeah.
Looks like a colonoscopy. I don't know, but
looks like a colonoscopy.
It looks like one of those like internal camera things that's just very upsetting to see. And so I just want to give that nice visual image to everyone. No, but I love that it's like, again, sensing that motion of like, you know, the timing of with his screen turning off. I can almost picture that flower like blooming on the screen as he has this revelation.
Yeah.
Great symbolism.
That moment also just doing it in close up and just like the sparse words and the speech bubbles, it reminds me a lot of just the final moment of Eyes Wide Shut.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
I will shut up. I will say no more.
I appreciate
good movie.
it.
I recommend it.
I think
no, this Kubrick guy you should maybe check out.
I've watched a lot of Kubrick, but I spend more of my time listening to music. Surprise.
All right.
Right, exactly. I spend most of my time watching movies.
Yeah.
Well, if you have time for a movie at some point, this is one worth watching.
All right, I will add it to my ever-growing list, but I will definitely check it out.
My scorching hot take. Yeah, this film by Stanley Kubrick is good and worth watching.
Just to insert another goddamn tangent into this, Patrick, did you see or do you know about how Marvel Comics apparently, it looks like Jack Kirby did an adaptation of 2001: A Space Odyssey?
Yes, Jack Kirby did the adaptation. I've never read it. I really want to. It looks wild.
That is now my holy grail, and I need to track that down. That's insanity.
During that weird period where for like a couple decades, Marvel would publish these movie adaptations. I think there's
they had Star Wars and stuff back in the day.
They had like an ongoing Star Wars comic similar to how they do now, but there's this an adaptation of I think Alien that I believe is drawn by Walt Simonson.
Whoa, I did not know about that. And that needs to be in my hands.
Like this weird assortment of comic adaptations of movies. And what I just bought, I haven't read it yet. So I have a podcast called Can't Get Enough of Keanu, in which we cover the filmography of Keanu Reeves. And I bought the collection, but I haven't read them yet. But Marvel published a Bill and Ted comic in the early 90s.
What?
That was written and drawn by Evan Dorkin. And it began with I think like a 2 or 3 issue adaptation of Bogus Journey, and then it continued on from there into just like original stories. And I've just flipped through it, and it looks nuts.
That sounds amazing.
So yeah, but it also weirdly published by Marvel at the time, but the collected edition is published by Boom, I think. Like Marvel gave up the rights to it.
Huh. That's really interesting.
Yeah. Anyway. Tangent.
Okay, and also just want to point out, I've never wanted to turn a page less than where we left off with this scene. Like opposed to where we talked about the brand and the art, and it just like almost turns the page for you. With Gwendolyn kicking in the door, and Noah, you did not mention that the voiceover here is. The advice to kill your darlings has been attributed to various authors across the galaxies, and Mr. Heist hated them all. The most foreboding shit in the universe, and I don't want any of it.
Yeah, I actually didn't even mention the end of also Prince Robot's face turns blue as he falls down and the books catch on fire.
Yeah.
And his screen cracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, fucking, and then Heist is shooting a gun, which he swore he would never do, and Clara gets shot, and shit is popping off here. It's fucking insane.
To get very technical here, in a way I tend to in my videos, because we've talked about how they're using various cinematic techniques in like the visual language of this comic, and what Fiona Staples does here that often doesn't happen in comics, she maintains really consistent geography in terms of like where like the directions that action is happening in. And where you've got like, Heist shoots from left to right across the page. And then next panel, Robot gets shot from left to right. And so there is this like consistent movement happening there. And again, these are happening in these like wide panels that resemble like, like an anamorphic aspect ratio movie frame.
Yeah, and it just again with that readability and the pacing, because this is if you're really fucking good at comics, one of the best things to do when you want the action to feel fast is have just calculate the eye line from left to right, or if you want to be really specific, like top of the left panel to bottom of the right side of that panel, and going back and forth, and that gives this scene such a speed to it, like everything's happening like domino effect here, and yeah, just that constant left to right motion, especially on that left page with Prince Robot, starting with Prince Robot shooting Clara, and yeah, it moves fucking beautifully.
Yeah,
it's so well done.
All right, you want to bring us home, Patrick?
I'll bring us home. So, picking up at the bottom of this page, Gwendolyn kicks in the door. She kicks in a door. It's honestly, it looks kind of like that moment from that one Community episode that has become a big meme of
the pizza
of Troy stepping in the door and the room is on fire. Yeah, it's kind of like that. But then. And this is all narrated by Hazel. Mm-hmm. And I think having the Hazel narration that you have to read, it really slows the scene down and it feels like it's happening in slow motion.
Yeah. That's a very good point.
And so Heist lifts the gun. Gwendolyn, wide-eyed and clearly scared, points the like retractable like snake sword.
The lance.
At the lance, yeah.
The freelancer's lance.
Exactly. And then we have a shot that takes up like 60% of the page. It is a heartbreaking where Gwendolyn skewers Heist through his one eye. Then he falls down dead. There is a real an extra heartbreaking panel as Clara just says no in all lowercase letters, no punctuation. Then she retracts the lance. Clara blasts a spell at her that she blocks with the cape. Lying Cat jumps on Clara. Gwendolyn says, fuck. And then, final splash page, she says, fuck again, but this time bold and italicized, as Gwendolyn's in the background. In the foreground, we have Prince Robot laying on the ground as we see his face screen that says restarting. This may take a few minutes. And then we have our cliffhanger. And so we just have these 3 pages that feel like they take an eternity to read. Mm-hmm. As in what, if this were like happening in real time, would probably take, I don't know, 4 seconds.
Yeah, this feels like a round of combat in D&D where it takes 20 minutes and is supposed to represent 6 seconds.
Yeah. So one thing that I just noticed on this read, and if you'll allow me to tell a short story.
Oh, weave us a yarn, Patrick.
Okay. I mean, the story involves me talking to Brian K. Vaughan.
Oh, we don't care then.
Who is my very good friend who definitely remembers this time that we met 7 years ago.
I'm not entirely sure how that's relevant to this.
So Okay, so we have this narration from Hazel about the writing advice of kill your darlings and how Heist hates that.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I found kind of funny and ironic about this is, have you guys read Runaways?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, so you both have.
Yeah.
Yep.
Is it okay if I drop spoilers for the comic Runaways?
Yeah, just a heads up for listeners at home, if you haven't read that 20-year-old book nearly.
I'm going to spoil a plot point from like near the end of Brian K. Vaughan's original run on the book. So when I was in high school...
One sec. John, in the edit, you should just kind of like jump in and say you can go to
1 hour, 11 minutes, and 43 seconds.
if you don't want to hear this story.
Well, I just added a robot saying the time when you said it. So to the blank. So
perfect.
There you go.
Perfect.
Great. Okay. I just want to be safe. I don't want to piss anyone off by spoiling stuff that they don't want spoiled. But anyway, so when I was in high school, I loved the series Runaways, and my sister, who I've already mentioned, who is 2 years younger than me, would also read it. That was her favorite comic, and her favorite character in Runaways was Gert. Mm-hmm. And there is an issue far into the book where
whose favorite character in Runaways wasn't Gert?
Yeah,
she was the best.
It's her a dinosaur. Those are the two options.
Exactly. But I remember, I think my sister was like, I don't know, maybe 14 or 15. I remember watching her read the issue where Gert dies because Brian K. Vaughan, he loves killing off beloved major characters very suddenly. And my sister was so mad at him. She was like, just like very upset. And for years after that, anytime Brian K. Vaughan would come up, she would just refer to him as that guy who killed Gert. Like she had held this grudge against him for so long. And then when Saga was released and Brian K. Vaughan was at my comic store for like the launch party, I owned a hardcover of the first like 12 issues of Runaways, and I brought it with me to get him to sign it for my sister, and I told him this story about it, and he apologized to her in writing and then wrote, "Sometimes we have to kill our darlings." and then like, I'm very sorry. And so I just found it funny because I have witnessed him write this exact expression while apologizing for doing that very thing. And then in Saga, like a couple of years later, maybe not even maybe more like a year later, he then wrote about an author hating that expression.
Yeah. I find this scene so interesting because I wanted to talk about this. Like, do you think this is, I think we're done the spoiler zone now. Welcome back.
No more spoilers. I'm done.
Do you guys, I'm so conflicted on this because I wonder if this is Brian K. Vaughan kind of speaking through Hazel and saying, kill the ones they don't love as much, and saying he doesn't love Heist as much. Or I wonder if it's him just saying it's kind of just this ironic twist and he is killing a darling.
Yeah, no, it is. It's very conflicting here because I mean, Heist isn't necessarily, integral to the story, but the scary thing is, like, beyond Hazel, no one is.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I mean, looking at this panel, the one where Heist dies.
Yeah.
And the only text there says, "Until only the darlings remain." Mm-hmm. And the way I read this is that, like, there's like a massive irony right there, because Heist has been, especially through this issue, such like an enjoyable, compelling character that we really care about. And watching and having this line about, like, oh yeah, get rid of everything that isn't a darling, keep them all, as this character that he wants us to like and care about is just dying horribly and like stupidly because I mean, again, Gwendolyn is just acting like impulsively out of fear. I do not think he means that Heist is he doesn't mean the Heist is one of the characters that he doesn't love as much.
Though I also think one of the things that he is saying with this, even if he isn't saying Heist isn't one, I also just read this as he loves Gwendolyn.
True.
Yeah, no, the whole thing, gosh, we've been talking about how this volume, this arc has been a lot of just growing tension, especially since we know that that confrontation is coming thanks to the end of the last arc, and it's been, I mean, easily the slowest arc yet in terms of just action. And holy shit, the payoff on these 5 pages and how much things just all the shit, all of the fan, the whole thing. It just goes fucking nuts, and congrats to them for having, you know, a good 4.5 issues of like growing tension and setup and everything, and then pay it off like perfectly in five pages. That is like one of just the biggest explosions of pure chaos that I have seen. I'm trying to think of something that compares to this. I'm thinking maybe that basement bar scene in Inglourious Bastards.
Oh no, that's a really good comparison. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
and I think it's interesting because I think a lot of this arc is actually very Inglourious Bastards influenced. We discussed the opening issue with Prince Robot and Oswald Heist as the opening scene of Inglourious Bastards too.
Yeah, with the people hiding out upstairs. But yeah, no, it is it's so effective. It's so well paced. And also I love the emotion that it actually like evokes here, which is especially with that last splash where it adds just this little bit of absurdity to it and this sort of iconicness to it. It actually reminds me a lot of like, you know, the blood dripping on the smiley face pin in Watchmen in terms just the length to which shit has gone insane so quickly, and then has this sort of absurdist flair to it where it always, every time I read this issue, it just leaves me with this like stunned grin on my face, specifically because of that last splash, where I just have no idea how to react to anything. And there's a legit, like, that Heist's death here is just traumatizing and has stuck with me so thoroughly, that image. And yeah, it is. Oh, it's fucking. Hey guys, I'm not coping well. It's fucking crazy.
Yeah. And I gotta say, it's nicely set up because I think like 2 or 3 issues earlier, we have that scene where Gwendolyn and the Will are hanging out, and he's teaching her how to use that lance.
Yeah, skewering the sky sharks.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and it seems so nice. It's like, hey, she's getting good at this thing, and now we kind of wish that she hadn't gotten so good at it.
Yeah.
First, they came for the sky sharks.
I love how earlier in the issue we get this ambiguous death with the Will. We're not sure if he's dead, if he's just passed out. We don't know. Mm-hmm. It is so abundantly clear that Oswald Heist is dead here. Like, you see the lance coming out of his head, and then the next panel where you see the blood coming from his eyes. It's like, that is such a great just visual storytelling to really hammer home, okay, this person is dead.
Yeah, no,
such a bummer.
Saga has implanted so many one-panel deaths into my brain that I am still so sore about talking about.
Yeah,
hating Brian K. Vaughan for killing off characters.
Yeah, when just so you know, Patrick, when Barr died, we both were like Marco's father. We both were just about in tears on the podcast.
I mean, again, I have watched multiple people over the years read deaths in Saga, and it's always like this abrupt physical reaction, just watching someone like turn a page and then be so immediately upset.
Patrick, I will point out, Noah is like still 3 or 4 issues behind on Saga, like up to the hiatus.
Oh my God.
And we are going to get some great reactions.
I'm gonna record myself reading it live.
Pain.
I might even take a video to send to those of you who can. Actually, you don't even know what I look like, Jonathan.
Wait, you guys have never met in person?
No,
we have never. He's in fucking Vancouver. Who has time for that shit?
Wait, John, where are you?
St. Louis.
Oh, okay.
We got the whole continent.
Don't get him fucking started on St. Louis.
I mean, I've met Noah in person.
Oh yeah.
But obviously not in Vancouver.
Yeah.
Right.
It was in person that I told Patrick about this podcast, actually.
Oh,
Yeah, I think Noah, I remember there was a moment when we were staying in the same house at VidCon where you walked into a room full of people and we're like, guys, do you see the news? Jeff Lemire is writing like this Black Label series for DC. And everyone else in the room is like, what do those words mean? And I was like, no, I did not hear this. Tell me more. And right there, we realized like, oh, we both like this shit. Yeah. Let's talk more about it. And then I think you brought the Saga podcast like right after that.
Yeah. We had a lot of good comic talks.
That's the most Noah shit I've ever heard.
So yeah, do we have any more thoughts on this scene other than Jesus Christ, it's so good?
Oh well, we do. This is the one service we offer on this podcast, which is translating all of the Blue language because they're actually speaking Esperanto.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so in this one, really riveting stuff here with Singerino Clara that Gwendolyn
Is
says
that
right after
Mrs. Clara
killing Heist. Noah, you fucking fool! It's Miss Clara. You dumb idiot. But that's it. she just recognizes Clara. And I like that there's like that's a good I guess that's what you would call your almost mother-in-law.
Yeah, your ex-mother-in-law.
Mm-hmm.
So now that we've read through all this, I mean, it's probably self-explanatory, but we gave Patrick free rein to pick anything in this issue, in this arc. Can you tell us why this issue stuck out to you, Patrick?
Okay, so I'll take you through my like mental process here. When you mentioned this arc, and I was like, "Ooh, it's the one at Heist's house." My immediate thought is, which issue has the most Ghüs? And then I realized, okay, Ghüs isn't really in this arc. He's introduced in issue 12, and then not really in this arc at all. And so I kind of went through it, and I mean, look, we all just read this issue. It's not the final climactic. Oh, okay. The following issue, without spoiling anything, has a lot of big emotional dialogue scenes. Mm-hmm. This is kind of the most suspenseful
absolutely
issue of the arc that has, that really escalates to such a huge final few pages.
Yeah.
And I thought, it kind of had like the most bang for its buck.
Yeah.
It had stuff that I wanted to talk about. And plus we got the introduction of the brand and Sweet Boy.
Yeah.
So that was really it. It was like, I kind of
fair.
My very simple mind was like, which issue has the most cool shit? and this, in my opinion, it's 17.
I would argue that this might be the most cool shit issue we've read yet, or at least it's very much up there.
Nice.
Yeah, this is one of the best single issues we've read yet, in my mind. So well chosen. And when you say it introduced the brand, already that feels like years ago that we were talking about the brand. So much happens in this issue.
Right.
Which means it's going to be really tough to pick out a favorite moment.
Yeah.
I forgot to tell Patrick about that thing that we do, the favorite moment. I told him about the rest.
Here, Patrick, something that if you can take or leave whichever ones you want to give options for, but we do favorite moment. We suggest a song that's usually vaguely, barely related to anything in the issue, and someone has been making like a Spotify playlist.
Well,
of
no,
the song suggestions we get.
I usually suggest a song that is really makes a riveting emotional companion to the issue, and you usually recommend a song that is just as jarringly different from the song that I suggested as it could be.
No, No, I picked the correct one.
Do all the songs go on the playlist?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It's a weird playlist.
It's an awful playlist.
Okay.
Because literally, because there's shit. Just to give you an idea of how low the stakes here are. For Fard's issue, the massive testicled giant, I picked "Big Balls" by AC/DC.
Oh,
So
nice.
If you can just kind of reach that bar, that level of
Okay,
of
because
genius.
I have a favorite moment and a song
All right.
Okay, yeah. Well, hit us up.
with both.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, favorite moment. It is the panel at the top of the third page when Sweet Boy goes snuffed and shoots the poison darts out of his nose.
Yep.
One
that's
for each
fair.
nostril.
Very good. Which will also tie into. We also do a question of the week if you wanna throw one of those in when the time comes. Just about anything to ask the audience.
I've got to think about that one.
Okay, we got some time before that.
Should I lay my really stupid song choice on you?
Please,
Yes.
please.
Okay, buckle up. It's dumb. Do I have to explain the moment it accompanies?
You
yeah,
can.
if you'd
It's
like.
up to you.
Okay, so my song choice is you'll I think you'll probably understand why, is the song Hide and Seek by Imogen Heap. Which is famously used at the very end of the season 2 finale of the OC. When a character bursts in through a door and shoots someone.
No fucking joke. I have to switch my song recommendation.
Yes!
That's amazing. That's so good.
You fucking hit that bar so thoroughly.
I'm so happy.
That's so good.
Oh, that's great. Noah, do you have a favorite moment?
I think my favorite moment is actually the end splash.
Everyone's stealing my shit here. Fucking
Gwendolyn
fine.
saying fuck, and just I love, like you said earlier, like the almost kind of like comedy, but also just like we were talking about with Ghüs and Friendo earlier, one of those things that just clicks. It's like it's a sticky idea. The idea that after Prince Robot is knocked out, he restarts and it's the blue screen of death. Like it's just so, it just makes so much sense, and it's so satisfying to see that, but also it's such a like it's this weird juxtaposition where it's this funny kind of neat clever thing, but then this terrifying moment of like Gwendolyn's back is turned, we're all rooting for Gwendolyn, Prince Robot the Fourth was just shot at and is restarting now, the lighthouse is burning down in the background, like there's so much happening in this scene.
Yeah, no, it's a great moment, and intelligent people are known to pick that moment and then have it ripped out from under them. You know what? I'm gonna go with the moment, the panel right before Gwendolyn kicks the door in, and it's just a very close shot on almost entirely it's Heist's face. He's smiling, and he says, "Oh, thank God, love. I was so sure-eyed."
yeah.
To Clara. And then is interrupted by a wham.
Oh.
And it is with that like sort of revelation of like, oh hey, we're together, almost, we're happy. Like he's expressing feelings that he had not expressed before, and then interrupted by a character wielding a weapon and the voiceover, "Kill your darlings." It's honestly, to again bring up Game of Thrones, it's like if right before shit popped off at the Red Wedding, there was just a pop-up on the screen that was like, "Do you want to continue?" And it's just the pain of turning this page for me.
Yeah.
And just how I was already devastated. And I knew in my soul what was going to happen. And then having to see it happen was so fucking upsetting. But yeah, they did what they were trying to do. I'm not especially happy about it, but they did what they were trying to do very well there.
And do you have a song, John?
Oh, fuck.
I can say mine
know
while
what,
you think.
No. To mirror, because I compared to, I really feel like that, like Well, actually, yeah, that last splash reminds me of like the last shot in the recent Watchmen episode, and just the ending of a lot of Watchmen issues, and just this like almost out of body look at the whole fucked up situation. And so just to tie it into Watchmen, I'm gonna say Unforgettable. Who was the Nat King Cole?
Yeah.
The good one. They're playing good ones. But yeah, I'm gonna say Nat King Cole, Unforgettable.
All right. And
What do you got?
I'm going to say, so since we talk about the opposite of war and we realize the opposite of war is fucking, which we barely even talked about that. So much fucking happened in this issue.
Yeah. Holy shit.
I'm going to suggest, and for whoever's out there making this playlist, please include, if you can, the full 17-minute version. Love to Love You Baby by Donna Summer.
Ooh, nice one.
I'm sorry. I'm the asshole
Because
I'm
that
the
is an
asshole on
orgy
this.
song if ever there was one.
I really thought you were gonna go with "Fuck the Pain Away" by Peaches.
That's fitting. All right.
Oh man. Well, speaking of good
And
songs,
so should we play that sweet question of the week music?
I wanna get Patrick ready for this, because he probably hasn't heard how good the
Oh my
song I'm
God.
about to play for him
Yeah,
live.
I don't know about it.
Yeah, no, it's a song, and I'm just saying, brace yourself.
This is the
'cause
oldest gag in podcasting, by the
It's
way.
really good. It's really good. All right, let's listen to it. Man, what a good song that was.
Oh wow, what a good joke!
Holy shit.
What a good original joke that's
Patrick.
never been done.
I'm so
Patrick, if you had to
impressed.
say your favorite thing about that song.
I mean, there are so many. Like, where to begin? Probably the way it begins, but also the way it ends was really good.
And the middle part's really nice too.
Yeah, I liked the notes, especially like the fourth and fifth ones.
Oh yeah, yeah, good
Ooh,
notes.
I'm more of a sixth guy.
Fourth, the
I'm
fifth,
more of a sixth
the
guy,
minor
but
fall, the major lift.
Yes, no, get
my
it. You know
gosh.
about music. And can quote songs.
All right. So, do you have since people stole both your song
Here.
and your scene, you can go first for question of the week, John.
Please. All right. Question of the week. This is one that I've been wanting to use for a while. But it's been in like my back pocket of, oh, this is a rad question that when it becomes relevant, or if we run out of questions, I'll ask it. And it becomes relevant in this issue. My question of the week is, what if you were a freelancer, what type of animal would your sidekick
Yes.
be, and what would its ability be?
Yes.
So build your sidekick.
Do we want to actually, if I mean, it's putting Patrick on the spot, but since he won't be here when
Do
we
it.
answer those, if you want to answer that right now, you can too, Patrick. If you've ever thought about what your companion would be.
Oh my god, that's. I don't know if I can answer that off the top of my head, because
That's
all I can
very
think
fair.
of are wait. Did the stock have an animal companion?
Not that we know of.
No, she was her own animal companion. I think.
So we've only seen a big hairless cat and then a dog.
Yeah. But I'm gonna say any animal. We know Lion Cat is a lie detector. We know Sweet Boy is a dart gun. So any ability, any animal.
This is such a huge question. I don't know if I have an answer like right off the top of my head.
You know what, Patrick? We've gone through so much to have you on this show. We worked so hard. We signed the contract where you officially changed the title from Horns and Wings to Patrick Explains Saga (parentheses) and why it's so great.
That is true.
And-
Okay. I'm going. I think it would be cool because I think these animals, these companions, tend to be like about a certain height.
Yep.
And so that seems to be an ideal one for them, so that they can like be some sort of like physical help. So I don't want a hairless cat, but a large cat that's like a kind of that sort of resembles like the great cats, like a cheetah or something like that.
Okay.
But with some sort of like alien aspect to it. Like, I don't know, maybe it has like purple and yellow stripes, or something like that. And it would have to have some sort of ability.
And
right?
is its name going to be Bustopher Jones? or Grisabella?
I mean, when you say that, Noah, then yes, obviously. So
don't take us down this path.
So it's gonna be named Bustopher Jones, like the character from the soon-to-be everyone's favorite film Cats, directed by Tom Hooper. And I will say, my cat would be so jellical. Just the most jellical of all the cats, because that's a word, I know what it means.
I'm dying.
Hey, you brought it up, and oh my God, what would it could shoot poison stuff. It can tell if someone is lying. What would be useful as a freelancer? Oh my God, I'm just like stalling now. I'm like trying to figure this out. Do you guys have answers?
Okay, I'm gonna make one off the top of the dome. It's gonna be an otter. I like otters, so otter's gonna be an adorable otter. But the otter has a little pouch, like a kangaroo pouch on its tummy. That's like a bag of holding. It's like it's like Newt Scamander's suitcase, where it's just like a whole. I can keep as much as I want in my little otter buddy.
And what's your otter buddy's
box.
name?
There we go. His name's Otterbox.
Nice.
That's it.
All right,
Yeah.
mine is gonna be a ferret. And it can turn invisible, so it can go like steal things from people.
Ferret was second.
And
no joke, that was my first thought. Originally was invisible ferret. This is terrifying.
Maybe I'm not that original. And its name is going to be my dude.
Okay.
So we've set the standard here. Hopefully you feel a lot more comfortable in your decision.
I
here,
do.
Patrick,
Okay.
because
So
it's all garbage.
Mine. So Bustopher Jones, my large, colorful cat, can vomit up delicious nuggets of food, so that while I'm traveling around the galaxy, I don't have to constantly stop and buy groceries. I can just have my cat just like vomit up stuff that just tastes awesome.
If any of you listening to this are artists, can you please do a depiction of Saga Patrick Willems and his companion Bustopher Jones?
Oh, get that cape on there.
Yeah, my only request is that give me a cape or a long coat, something that's flowy, because they look rad.
Basically, model it after the iconic Gwendolyn splash.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
And then with Noah's, do like the sextillion heads with legs, but it's just the polyphonic logo with legs.
I was gonna say, do people know what Noah looks like?
No,
You're not on camera, right?
I have never
Dr.
been on
Claw.
camera. You are in an elite group of people who know how much I look like every 25-year-old white dude on Earth.
The fact that you've held on to this fraction of your soul that you've not sold out on the internet is infuriating to me. How dare you?
But just draw me as a robot with the polyphonic logo.
Yeah, well, here's the thing. What Noah's doing is, like, you're just holding out until one day you can reveal yourself to the world and get so much attention. It's like, holy shit, polyphonic is gonna, like... We're gonna see his face,
dude. Oh, that's gonna be so clickbait. It's gonna be great. We have talked about doing potentially live shows at some point of this, especially if we can when Brian K. Vaughan just crawls to us begging to be on the show. Then we can do a beautiful grand reveal live episode. It's gonna sell out just to see Noah, I think.
Oh yeah.
I'm actually just gonna wear a Rorschach mask though, so
say you're gonna be in a full lion cat furry outfit all the time. So
I would pay to see that.
Oh God.
No, wear a Ghüs costume. That seems easier.
Oh, that'd be great. Oh, can we please cosplay our own live show?
That would be amazing. All right. Before we descend into madness, I think that this is a good enough place to end it. It's only been an hour and 50 minutes.
Fuck, I might have to break this into two. We'll see.
What? This happens every time I'm a guest on any podcast. Like we get to the end and the host is like, "Wow, this is our longest episode ever." I'm like, "What is wrong with me? Why does this always happen? I'm so sorry."
You have interesting things to say.
That's debatable.
I love it. So if people want to find you, Patrick, if they liked what you had to say and they want to send you their fan art of you and Bustopher Jones, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm on all the social media platforms as Patrick H. Willems. Willems is Willems. It's not Williams. I'm on YouTube. I make videos there where I talk about movies. Occasionally comic books come up. It's it's Patrick H. Willems on YouTube, and listen to my podcast that is similarly tangent filled, but dumber, way dumber than this one. Can't get enough of Keanu. We're exploring the filmography of Keanu Reeves movie by movie. That's like enough for now. I'm all over the internet. The only other Patrick Willems is like a Belgian scientist, so you won't mix us up.
Yeah, I'm gonna forfeit part of my my signal boost moment here to say go watch Patrick's his cat's video.
Yeah.
Please.
Please.
Fucking fantastic. And also, I think that the plot holes video you did is one of the greatest public services ever created. And you're fighting the good fight. And so go check those out.
Thank you. That's so nice of you to say because a lot of people disagree with you about that video.
No. I mentioned in passing in a Last Jedi video that art is not objective, and boy, that was a fun comment section.
It was the first time I did a video about Star Wars was the moment I realized, I'm going to stop reading the comments forever. And and you know what? It's made my life better.
Yeah,
that is the correct move. And yeah, go check out Make Stuff on YouTube. We do some fun stuff.
Yeah,
we make stuff. Wow, on YouTube.
And check out Polyphonic. I as I'm recording this, I'm actually about to release a new video about degraded media that is super interesting and personal. And go look at my art on Watch Polyphonic on Instagram. I've been doing weird, creepy art for Inktober because apparently I can do that. How
are you so productive? It like breaks my brain anytime someone mentions to me like, oh yeah, Noah's like got this whole like extra series he did on the side that's like just like in the can. I'm like, well, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. Speaking of which, go to Nebula.
God damn it.
It's our own streaming service. Watch my Dark Side of the Moon series.
Yeah, that like when I heard that you'd done that, I like had an aneurysm. I was like I'm always behind schedule, and somehow you were like ahead, which like it doesn't compute for me. This is like I am Prince Robot, and I am laying on the floor like having with like a blue screen of death when I hear about how far ahead you are with videos.
Well, thank you, I guess.
Oh my gosh. Literally, since you told me about your idea for that series, and now it existing, I don't think I've come out with a video essay.
To be fair, only half of it exists, but yeah.
I have put out 17 beautiful, highly well-produced episodes of this very podcast, though. So
yeah.
We're all doing our part.
How I do so much is Jonathan does all the work on the podcast.
And of course, a big thank you to Fiona Staples, and now I can pretty much say our close personal friend Brian K. Vaughan, and of course Phonographix and Image Comics for making just the fucking best comic ever. And hey, Patrick, we close out this podcast in a pretty profound way. And it always keeps us humble. It reminds us of the very first line of dialogue in the very first issue. And if you would like to close us out in that way, the line is, of course, am I shitting?
Just that line?
Just that line.
Whatever delivery you would like.
How you want to sell it, it's up to you.
The line is just, am I shitting?
I'm looking at the page right now. I'm gonna try to give my best Alana performance.
Please do. Get in that headspace. You're mid birth here. You're crowning.
Am I shitting?
Hey.
Bye.
Bye.
I spat a little bit while doing that.
Am I spitting?
No.